Yes, Spurs fans, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur, and we are going to be providing you guys your Tuesday night panel show, joined by the lovely Lee, the Dorset Spur, and of course, Sam, who's made a constant effort of being on here during these weekly shows. And we're entering the last and final week of the transfer window, and it seems like so far it's been the same old story of really not a whole lot going on or not a whole lot happening by the looks of things, looking from the outside in. Of course, it's been that way during the Johan Lange era, which we will be discussing maybe his time as the Tottenham Hotspur director of football, or whatever title you want to give him. But he has been in charge of the transfers for at least the last 2 summers, and not a whole lot necessarily has been done during his time here. And it looks like Paratici could be retaking over. It's become breaking news in the last few minutes or so. And we're going to be discussing Johan Lange's time here, his failures, his successes, if any, and we'll be, of course, talking about the last and final days of this transfer window and whether Thomas Frank can be backed, because it feels like Thomas Frank is doing his side of the bargain. He's getting some good wins. He's giving us that feel-good factor. He's making us look tough to beat. We're picking up some good results, but he's not necessarily being given the tools that he would have wanted or that we would have wanted for him to have to start off this campaign. But of course, there's still a week left, and maybe people will accuse me once again of being way too negative by the time this gets out. But everybody, good to have you all with us. Smash the like button, get into the comments, please. We'll bring them up on screen. Also, as well, do look out in the post section for questions from all the members that we will answer towards the end of the show. And if you do want to stop us at any point, if you disagree or agree or feel like we might be missing something, feel free to throw it in as a super chat, and we'll get through it straight away. But without further ado, so we don't waste these lovely people's times for making time out of their evenings, get started with just a nice little teaser of a question just about maybe a potential option that I know Dave really likes, loves this guy. Dusan Vlahovic could be available, according to Ben Jacobs, towards the end of this window. Earlier this summer, many Spurs fans would have seen this as maybe a no-brainer to snap him up and bring in him and move on someone like a Richarlison. But with Richarlison starting off so strongly with 2 goals and 1 assist in 2 games, has maybe the narrative changed around the striker roles for Spurs this summer? Would you take someone like a Vlahovic and then still maybe offload a Richarlison? Or are you starting to get behind maybe the Richie and Solanke era? So now that we have Lee, the Dorset Spur back with us, I'm going to go to him first. Good to have you back, Lee. And how do you feel about the Richie renaissance, or do you really buy into it at all?
Hey, first things to say, thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. I know it's difficult sometimes to kind of sync times and get together, but yeah, Richie, how do we feel about it? I mean, to be honest with you, I've been one that's been constantly saying he's got to go, he's not good enough, and so on. But when you see him playing the way he's playing, I don't think you can ever doubt his work ethic. It's just been his final product. Can he score the goals? Is he going to provide the assists and everything? So now I'm kind of thinking, well, it's come a bit too late really for him to kind of be certain that this is the real deal from him. Is he going to be able to, kind of keep it going? So it'll be an interesting one to see. I personally think he stays. I think Frank likes him. I think Frank is kind of seeing what he can get out of him. It's obviously a World Cup year, so he wants to be that Brazil number 9. So it kind of makes sense. I think the bigger one really is what's going to happen with Solanke, because I've been a big fan of his. I thought his work rate last season was brilliant, considering he was playing in a poor team, and he had to do an awful lot of other work to try to get on to kind of get anywhere. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on when he gets back in from injury. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it would hurt to have another striker come in. To be honest with you, it wouldn't hurt to have anyone come in at the moment. But we'll see where it takes us. But I personally don't think Richie goes. I think he stays.
I think the way he's
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. To be clear, I'm okay with it if he can continue like down this road. But if he doesn't, then the writing's on the wall for sure. This is his kind of last chance to really give an impact,
I mean, it's good that he started off so strongly, right? But I don't really feel like it's where, even from the beginning of the window, I didn't feel like it was where our biggest problems really lied, was in the striker roles. Like, of course, we could technically do better than Richie and Solanke, but it felt like there were other gaping holes really in the squad that needed addressing more than really the striker role, in my opinion. And also, we know with Thomas Frank, he seems to like, this hardworking, big number 9, up top. It seemed that Richarlison and Solanke weren't the worst options to have available. Maybe later down the road, you could think about upgrading those in those positions. But I didn't think from the get-go it was necessary to upgrade on it. But Dave, I know you're a big fan of someone like Dusan Vlahovic. You could say he's a little bit cold right now, especially the last few seasons. That whole Juventus move just really hasn't worked out for him at all. And Richie, he's in a little bit of a renaissance right now. Or do you even buy into this Richie renaissance?
Look, this is what I'm trying to sort of figure out. He's saying all the right things, that he wants to stay. He has no intention of leaving and stuff like that, which is nice to hear, considering a lot of players, down the years want to try and get out of Tottenham. But we've seen this from Richarlison before. He's had purple patches before where he's done well.
Purple patch, yeah.
But he's never been able to stay fit or do it over the course of a season. And when I look at our two front men, I don't have faith at least one of them are going to have a 20-plus goal a season. And I think that's what we need. We can sit here and say back, oh, yeah, but now we do set pieces. Other people contribute. I heard it all under Ange Postecoglou. And like I said back then, they contributed under Conte. Højbjerg score goals, Bentancur score goals, etc. Players contribute. Your whole team usually contributes over the course of a season. Anyway, people pop up with goals. But I do think what is lacking in this team is that 20-plus goal a season that you guarantee. So not someone that's going to directly replace Kane, but can at least replace a good amount of the goals that he scored for us. And that is something that I do think we lacked last season. I do think a lot of it has come down to service. You see Richarlison is banging goals with a bit of service out wide there from Kudus. But, last season we got into the trap of praising them for working hard. I'm sorry, these guys are on fucking between 50 and 100 grand a week. It's bare minimum I expect is to see someone run around. If you want to win a game of football, you've got to be able to fucking run around. Running around is key to winning games of football. Working hard should be absolutely key. But, we didn't exactly praise them for the goal-scoring exploits or how great they were at linking up play. Now, granted, Richarlison has started the season on fire and his link-up play is looking pretty good right now. Look, I think we might get away with it this season in terms of Richarlison will be highly motivated with a World Cup year. Dominic Solanke will be highly motivated when he gets his opportunity with a World Cup year. But neither of them are really consistent. And for me, you got to weigh up the opportunity. Do you miss out on someone like Dusan Vlahovic? And then you look at the striker market, maybe next summer. What else is out there that's really going to be available on the market? A lot of strikers have been snapped up this year. They were only after joining clubs. So now I predict that market would probably be quite dead next summer. So it's sort of like, do you miss your opportunity if you don't take Dusan Vlahovic? Look, I agree with Lee. I don't think the club will make a move on him. For me, personally, I would look to shift one of them on. Probably Solanke, to be honest with you, although he's only after joining, so that's going to be a hard sell. And the reason why I'd say Solanke is I like Solanke, don't get me wrong, but when he first joined, I remember saying to you, Jack, it's one thing finishing week in, week out at Bournemouth when there's no pressure on you, but it's another thing doing it at Tottenham Hotspur when there's pressure on every single game. And I just don't think Dominic Solanke is up to the task. So for me, personally, I know we have other positions that we need to fill, but if the opportunity's there, I wouldn't miss out.
Well, to be fair, to just offer a counter, Dusan Vlahovic made that transition from Fiorentina to Juventus and hasn't taken up, the chances that he's been given playing for a much, much bigger club with much higher pressure. In fact, he's almost really slipped off the pedestal. Of course, Juventus have in general, but I would say that he hasn't. Yeah. So it's just to use your argument against you, No,
100%. I get what you're saying, but sometimes, players can make the wrong moves and a club can be a bad fit for them for one reason or another. And when I look at Dusan Vlahovic, I think that's the case there. I think when you look at him with Fiorentina, I still think that player is in there. A lot of people, when I brought Evan Ferguson to the table, they were laughing at me over the last few years. Now look what he's doing out on Roma. Sometimes, things don't go your way for a period of time. But I look at Dusan Vlahovic, I think he's got the size, the strength to be able to hold up the ball, play players in, get on the end of things. I think he's exactly what you need in the Premier League. And if we don't get him, Newcastle will get him. And I think next season we'll be looking into the striker market with not a whole lot out there.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think in general, what you were right about, though, is that there has been a huge dearth of strikers, really, in general, to work with. And maybe seizing up on a guy like Vlahovic for such a cheap fee could be not bad business, to be honest, especially with the way Spurs operate, looking at maybe the cheaper options. But Sam, what do you think? Would you still take the opportunity to sell someone like a Richarlison, potentially upgrade with someone like a Vlahovic, or are you buying into the Richarlison redemption arc?
I'll start on the Vlahovic section. I'm definitely not against the signing of Vlahovic. My only concern with signing a player like Vlahovic is I feel like Richarlison and Solanke, although they're not the same player, they've got similar profiles in terms of strength, height, physicality. And I feel like we don't really have any significant pace in our strikers, if that makes sense. And unless you're going to go and sell one of
You
these
don't need
players,
pace in your strikers. As long as they're in the box and they can get on the end of things, that's all that matters.
You do, though, if you're trying
Kane
to
never
have
had pace.
yeah, but I'm talking about having different options.
Sheringham never had pace.
My point is,
never
Dave,
had pace.
yeah, but I don't, frankly, respectfully, I don't care about these players. I care about now. And
are you one of these that pacemaker player?
No, it's not the pacemaker player. If you let me land my point, I will I will back it up. We've already got Richarlison and Solanke, right? They, as I said, they offer similar roles in the team. Whether you think that Richarlison's will sniff out a chance better than Solanke or not, that's kind of irrelevant for now. I look at it that unless you're going to get rid of one of those players, which I get that is part of your question, Jack, but unless you are going to get rid of one of those players, I feel like if you want to bring in another striker, you need to bring in someone that offers something different to those two. And for me, those two have great qualities, but don't necessarily have that, can potentially take a ball on the turn, beat the defender for pace and get a shot off. We don't have that. The only player that really could do that, and we're yet to see it, obviously, because it's early on, is Kudus so far. I haven't seen anyone else in our team over the last couple of years beat a man with a bit of skill and then burn them towards the goal to get a shot off. And so personally, as much as I like Vlahovic, and I think that he also has a lot of great qualities that would be definitely enriched by the coaching of Frank, I do think that unless you're going to get rid of one of those players, which I just don't necessarily see happen. Don't get me wrong, I agree with you about Richarlison's purple patch. He's definitely a patches player, but to be fair to him, in terms of Spurs, every time he has a purple patch, he gets injured for 6 months. So he can't continue with that. And I don't think there's many Spurs fans out there that if Richarlison could stay fit, would be saying, like, we'll be happy to keep him. But that's the question. And you're right, to go into the season with a player who potentially will play 10 to 15 games in Richarlison, like full games. And then even Dom, who, was completely indestructible at Bournemouth and comes to Spurs and he's already had, 4 injuries now? 4 injuries? The only thing I would say about Solanke as well that I feel like he doesn't get maybe a lot of credit for is genuinely there was no service to him last season. Don't get me wrong, he fluffed a few chances, but when you're not getting consistent chances created for you, I think it's difficult to consistently put them away. And I think back to 2 specific goals where he's piqued my interest to give him at least one more season before I start to really criticize. And that was the goal against Emi Martinez where he dinked it over him, just a beautiful goal. And then also the home leg in the I think it was the Carabao Cup against Man United when he got played in by Jed Spence. He took one man on and then just smashed it into the bottom corner. I just feel like we created very, very little of those chances for any of our players. And if we can actually create some chances, and it looks like we will under Frank, because let's be honest, our attack is worse than it was. Besides Kudus, it's worse than it was without Maddison and Son and Kulusevski. And we're still probably creating more chances than I'd seen at least from the back end of the season. I'm open to new recruits, but I also think that you'll probably have to let one of those players go.
The only thing I can add to this, Lee and Dave, before we move on is I wonder if just Richarlison and Solanke are maybe both going to have a season of judgment, really, where Richarlison is probably on his final legs with us. He has to take advantage of this good patch of form that he's in if he has any chance of sticking with us a bit longer. And then Solanke is kind of coming off the back of, I would say, like a pretty, decent, might be generous or maybe average, sort of kind of campaign where he wasn't great, but wasn't terrible either. He's kind of in the middle to a degree. Maybe a lot of people are in Sam's boat where he wasn't necessarily given the service, whatever you feel about it, right? He's coming off of a sort of okay season, really. And so it's kind of up to both of them to really prove their worth in this season. So maybe it's a good situation to be in that we just have two guys that should be hungry to try to prove themselves. And then, like I said in the beginning, I think we have much, much bigger areas that we need to be addressing right now with only so many days left in the window with the left wing and number 10 role. And to be honest, I still feel like even though it's going to get ignored, I still feel like we need to be signing a fullback, of some kind to sort of help us out on that left side. But Lee and Dave, maybe final comments on this question before we move on.
Yeah, look, when it comes to Solanke, I think, look, it is a fair argument to say, did he get as much service as maybe other Premier League strikers last season? No. But, the sign of a good striker is someone that sniffs out chances. And I think Richarlison is much better at sniffing out the chances than Dominic Solanke. I think Richarlison is much more better at reading crosses into the box. He's much more proactive in terms of his movement. Many times when we done breakdowns last year, Jack, we often pointed out how late and reactionary Solanke's movement was to what's unfolding ahead of him. For me, when I was growing up, I was told you make a great run, almost dictates the pass. You know what I mean? So for me, I think Richarlison is much better at that than Dominic Solanke. Personally, just my problem with Richarlison is that the fucker can never stay fit, and he can't do it consistently over the course of the season. Look, I think we will go with these two strikers. I just think, what if it doesn't work out with one of them this season, which I don't think it will? What's left for Spurs to go next season? This is where I think maybe if Spurs want to be clever and, want to be known as, great businessmen and everything else, you realise that, a lot of clubs are pivoting back to getting your big strikers in. We can sit here and say we've got two similar strikers, but, Man City went and got Haaland, Arsenal went and got Gyökeres, Chelsea went and got the Lap. We've got Richarlison and Solanke here. Liverpool have gone and signed Ekitike, Newcastle have Isaac. Well, for how much longer? So what you're seeing is, football is reverting back to your traditional big men up front, strikers and stuff like that. And for me, I think there's not a lot left on the market, and I think they have to make a decision whether they should go for Dusan Vlahovic and upgrade before the final days of the window or not. And
final things you want to add, Lee, before we move on?
Yeah, no, all I was going to say is I personally, I think this is Richarlison's last season regardless. I don't think he stays after this season anyway. But I do think we're doing Solanke down a little bit, in my view. I've watched him a lot.
Tell me what I'm missing, Lee.
No, I don't know. It's all about perspective, mate, isn't it? And it's all about opinions, right? I really like Dominic Solanke. I think you have to consider how many injuries he had last season. I think Sam said that, he never had any injuries in Bournemouth. He come to Tottenham, he's injured 3 times. And that's going to have a massive impact to your contribution. He's working with... Is that
due to the workload, though, on that one, Lee?
Well, that was a point. That's the point I was going to make, right? Is that he was working in a midfield that was woefully under sort of supported, and he's dropping deep an awful lot, trying to make runs. His service was coming from Johnson, who is great at arriving late and scoring, but
careful now, slagging off Johnson.
I'm not slagging him off. What I'm saying is, if you look at what Kudus has brought in terms of crosses into the box since he's come in those 2 games, it's night and day. And Johnson's been playing on the left, and you're still not seeing any of that. He's scoring goals, but he's not providing anything. And Solanke had to work off of that. So for me, I think Solanke needs an opportunity this season. But I do think that this is the season where he has to prove himself. But Richarlison, I think this is a season where he does what he does, and then he goes off into the sunset. But I think for Solanke, if he doesn't do it this season, then I think it'll have to be upgraded for sure. So. But I'm with you. If you can get another striker in, that's great. But is he proven in the Premier League? And that's where I'm concerned. I want someone who is proven, who's gonna do the job. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
And we'll kind of move on now to just sort of maybe your perspective on how the season has started. Lee, back-to-back wins, 5 goals scored, 2 clean sheets. It's technically, I think, based off maybe goal difference and everything, some of the best starts that Spurs have had to, I think, since the time of 2014, 2015 season. What are your realistic expectations, for Spurs now that you've gotten maybe a brief glimpse of them? Are we going way too early? What are your impressions so far of Thomas Frank, and maybe the long term of how this season is going to look?
Listen, I've been a fan for nearly 50 years, right? I've been going to games and stuff like that, and I've tried to train myself not to get too excited over anything that starts too soon. Even on Saturday at sort of 88 minutes, I'm thinking to myself, we could probably get a draw here. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of where my head was at. So I try not to get too excited, but at the end of the day, should we expect to beat Burnley? Yes, we should have done, right? But is Burnley a potential banana skin? Have we fallen by the wayside against teams like that before? Yes, we have. Would they be difficult to beat because were they going to be, low block and make it difficult? So to score 3 goals against them in the way that we did, control the game, I thought was fantastic. In terms of City, bogey team or not, they're still City and still difficult to beat. There'll be a lot of teams that will go out there that won't win, right? So to come away from there with a 2-0 and control that game towards the end of it, we were in total control of that game, and that was really good to see. And I was surprised that he didn't go with a PSG kind of 5 at the back, type of thing. He kind of went out there and said, we can still provide our options and stuff. So I'm liking the variety of how he does it. Like I say, Burnley, we had Gray and Bergvall and Sarr in midfield, and you're like, Jesus, like, what's he smoking? But they did a great job. They did what they needed to do, and that must come from the coaching, from the confidence that he's providing, and so on. And if you can keep these players fit and not overrun them with having to play week in, week out every game with all that we got to play for, then maybe we can have a decent season. I don't think we're a 17th in the league team anyway. I didn't think we deserved to be down there in anyway last season. But I still feel we desperately need some reinforcements to give Frank half a chance of competing on all 4 fronts, as they keep telling us. So, early days, and I try not to get too excited, but at the end of the day, a couple of really good results, and long may that continue.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's hard to make these judgments, because when you make these early judgments, all of a sudden, once the games do start coming thick and fast, that's when I think you really can start to judge the teams, because you see so many teams start off on an absolute flyer, but then once November, December comes around where you're playing, pretty consistently, injuries start to occur, then you get a real taste of, who's actually up for it in terms of finishing higher up in the table. And also as well, the big thing, which is balancing multiple competitions at the same time. But Thomas Frank hasn't put a single foot wrong, really, to start off with, Dave. So do you want to go early and say that he could be showing something special here, or are you kind of maybe still waiting a little bit?
I text me out lad after the City game, and I says, we look solid,
Yeah, you're happy clapping already.
Yeah, a bit of happy clapping, and lad texts me back, says, son, you know better. He says, wait till 6 games in, and then we'll see how we look, which he's right. It's always the same. That's when you start, when 2 games a week starts coming in, is the true test of how good you really are, and can you handle it. But look, I think, when Frank came in, I was expecting him to bring that defensive solidity. I always maintained that. I thought Romero and Van de Ven are world-class centre-backs. I think we've got very good full-back options. And I always maintained that I think he'll make a solid defending set pieces and a threat from set pieces. My big question mark around Thomas Frank was, he can't sit back off teams like he did at Brentford, play counter-attack, and you've got to go and press them. You've got to, and you've got to play an attacking brand, football at Tottenham Hotspur. He's going to have to adapt it slightly. And that's where I've been very pleasantly surprised with Thomas Frank. The fact that he has brought a brand of football that is palatable, to watch for Spurs fans. Because, when we brought Nuno from Wolves, who, for instance, was making the same step up, he failed to sort of adjust what he was trying to do or adjust his game plan. And Spurs fans just weren't having it. You were having Kane and Son trying to dribble from the edge of our own box, to get through teams. So that's where I've been pleasantly surprised by Thomas Frank, and fair play to him. Now, of course, let's not get carried away. We've been here before. I think, the signing of Kudus and Paulinho have made, I think, the signing of Paulinho, for instance, given us presence in midfield. As good as Graham Bergvall done last year, we lacked presence in midfield, that physical presence. Paulinho has been a huge asset in that regard. Having Bentancur ready from the start of the season has been a huge plus. Also, bringing in Kudus, having that creativity we didn't have last year has been a huge plus. But two things that no one is talking about, and it's because we're winning games, is how high the fullbacks are and how high the defensive line is. You know, last season, Ange was absolutely ridiculed for playing the fullbacks the way he did, the high line and everything else. But Frank is employing a very similar sort of system. You go back and you look at Carragher's breakdown, how high the fullbacks were on the press and everything else. You know, so fair play to Thomas Frank. You know, he's seen all the criticisms labelled at Ange, and he could have walked in here and said, I'll do absolutely everything opposite. He hasn't. I think he sort of took some ideas and implemented it off the back of his own. And I think, you know, what we're seeing is a very well structured team. But of course, when the games come in twice a week and you have to start rotating and you pick up injuries, that's going to be the true test of our squad. The true test of our squad isn't the starting 11. It's the guys that are coming in to back these guys up. Can they still put results on the board? And that's where Tottenham Hotspur have been let down under Pochettino. They were let down under Jose, under Conte, and under Ange with all the same things. The backup players are never, ever good enough to come in and maintain what the first 11 have started or the way they've started the season. So that'll be the true test. Also, when the games come in twice a week, how quickly can Thomas Frank's team turn around the game plan, spot the weaknesses from the opposition, because you have a lot less time to work, you have a lot more flying and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting, but nonetheless, it's been a very good start, and I think Thomas Frank has surprised me, like I said, just to recap on how we are going forward. Like, you look at the game at the weekend, what was it, 37% possession? But I mean, apart from the first 20 minutes, Tottenham dominated, and I was very happy with what I was watching. You know, we went direct at them, we created chances and stuff like that. So it didn't feel like, you know, we had 37% possession. So fair play to Thomas Frank. It's a great start. I think best start since 2014-15. Pochettino was in charge back then. You know, maybe there's a bit of Poch vibes happening here. Maybe this is the guy, the right guy long term, but he's only going to be as good as the board back him.
I think the biggest surprise has been that against the better teams, he actually has employed this high press, or at least, you know, very aggressive play style, which is, I think, came as a surprise to me. I did think, you know, against PSG, against the likes of Man City, we would just be sitting back, waiting for the team to cross into our half and then try to win the ball back there. But in both of those games, we're seeing the midfielders press really high up. Maybe to be super specific, maybe the slight change has just been, it seems to be a bit more kind of man for man, you know, kind of using those really combative midfielders instead of
having
just...
Paulinho allows you to sort of,
yeah,
you know, the players to push up, because he's so reliable back there,
yeah,
you know, in terms of breaking down attacks.
And maybe in Ange's case, he seemed to think that he could get two number 10s to try to sort of do that combative midfield type work. But Frank is almost going a bit different, where he's just using the hardest working midfielders he has available to him, and Sarr, Paulinho, and Bentancur to try to win the ball back. Yeah,
Ange was screaming for someone like a Paulinho. You know what I mean? If we had him, maybe you might have seen it a little bit different. But I do think Paulinho makes that massive difference in the Frank team. He sort of protects that back line. We've already kept 2 clean sheets. But, you know, one thing that I noticed with Paulinho against Man City, you know, you go back to Man City last year, Johnson sort of went like that and let a guy run by him, and the ball ended up in the back of our own net. And I was screaming, where's the football intelligence to realize the danger, pull him down and take a yellow card? Earlier on in that game against Man City, one of their players cut in off the left-hand side, and the gaps were open in our back line for him to make the pass. Paulinho took him out. You know, and that's the massive difference. That's where you don't get exposed. That's where you're not conceding as many chances or goals. And I do think Paulinho is making that massive difference in that midfield. And Frank has been a beneficiary of that. And once you have that back line and that solid midfield, because what we're seeing Papa Sarr do, let's not pretend he didn't do that last season, or that's been a feature of his game. What we're seeing Bentancur do has been a massive feature in his game, you know, even under Ange. The big difference is having someone like Paulinho in that still, because anytime they do break, we're able to cut it out.
I would add, though, that we don't look nearly as narrow when we're also in the defensive shape, too. Like, it seems to be a little bit more organized in that sense, because it felt like it was way too easy for certain teams to bypass our press by just going with those big switches of play or big long balls over the top. Then all of a sudden we were just completely cut out and, you know, running back towards our own goal. Where in this case, it seems like we're a bit more organized that way. But Sam, I mean, are you going to start happy clapping like Dave is here with the Thomas Frank ball? Are you getting Poch vibes?
Oh no, he's frozen.
He's fixed in contemplation. He's got a thinking face on. It's actually a great frozen camera.
Hopefully it's not a board and it drops and we see him. We don't start seeing him doing something nefarious.
Whenever the cam gets frozen, that's a good one to be frozen on. Just out of due diligence, there's well over 300 people on YouTube watching us, almost 200 people on Twitter following us as well. So please, if you're over on Twitter, feel free to follow us over to YouTube and watch us over here, and also smash the like button while you're in here. And we'll bring up Dermatron's comment here and also get to Eddie's in just a sec, because we will be talking about the Johan Lange in just a minute there, Eddie, but we got to get to Sam. I'll take this from Dermatron, member for 42 months as an elite member, saying, big up, guys. I have a lot to say. Thank you both for being here, and in the bad times and the good times, you always had my back. Keep doing what you're doing. Never change. Never change from the day I met you. Now, come on, you Flat Cap Army. Come on, you Harris Army. Come on, you Spurs. Dermatron's in the happy clapping mood as well. He's feeling good. He's reflecting on life, reflecting on Spurs. Everybody's in a good mood. It's just only the transfer window could make us feel even better about things. But appreciate the longevity of support and the very solid dedication to us as well, Dermatron. Appreciate you, sir. Sam, you getting Poch vibes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to compare him yet to anyone. It's still too early. Don't get me wrong. Like I do love a good nostalgia piece like anyone else, but right now I wanna leave Frank to be his own man. And I think everyone can obviously see the positives. I mean, it's been mentioned, some of the organization, the fact that we are creating chances, we're not so narrow. I think that Frank is benefiting at the moment from in a different way, but similar to Ange's first 10 games, where no one really knew what to expect from Spurs. And whilst I say that he's profiting from the same thing, his is more from his own making in terms of, everyone would have probably said, I didn't watch your predicted lineup video, but a lot of ones that I did see, they said that against Man City, we'd probably play a back five.
Yeah, I was just saying.
Like the PSG game, right? So to go into that game and not play a back five, suddenly probably all of Pep's week of work is gone. And to be honest, after that, you said 20 minutes. I can't remember exactly how long it was, but I felt like the opening 10, 15 minutes, they pressed us. And I was like, oh my God, we're in trouble here. This could be ugly. And then from that sort of point onwards, we basically dictated the whole game. I won't say dominated because they had the ball, but we allowed them to do what we allowed them to do. They had that one Haaland chance where he dribbled through a few players and slipped through Marmoush, and it was a great save from Vicario. But other than that, there was only really the Porro mistake that Marmoush also shot from that I can really remember them having a serious chance. My concerns with Frank, because I feel like everyone knows I was pretty pro Frank when he was coming, so I'll try and be a little bit more sort of reflective on it. My concerns are the lack of creativity in the squad. And I really feel like going forward, if we don't bring anyone in, then up until Kulusevski comes back in December, or even probably longer because it's going to take him a while to get back into the swing of things, we're going to struggle against teams that will, sit more resilient. And that Burnley game, there was probably about 30 minutes accumulated in that game where Burnley were actually on top. Not necessarily in a line, but they had, a lot of momentum in that game, and they just couldn't put the ball away.
Burnley gave us more trouble than Man City seemed to.
Yeah, exactly. So going into the Man City game, I was actually quite concerned that my prediction was 3-2, because I was thinking, a better team is going to punish us with the chances that we gave Burnley. And look, to all of our delights, Frank put in a masterclass, probably one of the better managerial performances we've seen against a City, because rather than just, smash and grab, we actually, as I said, we dictated the game. And they were always going to have more possession, but that was probably the most possession we've had against Man City for years. And everyone told me that Frank was just going to be a really defensive, pragmatic manager. But, as Dave said, we have seen, I'm not sure it was the full, I think in the Carragher analysis, he was actually showing that it was Mickey van der Ven that was the highest player. And then the two players that were back were the two fullbacks. Mm-hmm. But as we said, I think you can just see the organization is just so much more clear. And I don't know if any of you guys, assuming that you did, I don't know if you watched any of the 3 Spurs play press conferences after the game, where they had the 2-minute interviews with Frank, Palhinha, and Mickey van der Ven. Mm-hmm. clearly in Frank's team talks and his meetings, he's drilling home, and his coaches are drilling home this. What was the word that they used? It was like mentality and mindset. They kept saying mentality and mindset, all three of them. And it was like almost like they were reading from the same script. But the way that Palhinha was talking about it, and subsequently Mickey van der Ven afterwards, I was like, wow, these guys, like, they believe it already. Palhinha sounded like he was already ready to die for Thomas Frank.
When you're winning games, though, Sam, that's what buys belief into what the manager's telling you. You know what I mean? And then you keep winning games, you lap it up by like gospel. I think a lot of them players would have went into that PSG game fearing the worst, and then they they come out of it with their heads held high, a lot of respect from the game plan. That gives you belief going into Burnley. You win that 3-0, you slap them. That gives you belief going into City. All of a sudden, you come out with that. All of a sudden, you start listening to everything the coach is trying to tell you, because it's a massive change to a large degree from last season. And in terms of the creativity, look, everyone knows it's a huge problem of mine from open play, how uncreative we can be at times. But I would argue the fact that Frank goes a lot more direct, I think, sort of circumvents that, or takes that away for a little. With the throws into the box direct from set pieces. He's not afraid to instruct Vicario to go along, or some of the centre backs to go along with Porro. I think it sort of circumvents us, because last year under Ange Postecoglou, we were always trying to make 5-10 yard passes, and we didn't really have the players to have the guile or that to really get on the ball, take a player out of the game, or produce something. Whereas I think Frank realizes that, and he goes, okay, well, fuck that. Let's stick with Richarlison up front, Kudos out wide. And you look at him, there he's 2 out balls every single time, get it into them like Kudos. I mean, he's so reliable. You could just pump the ball into him. He's so strong. He's always in the right position in front of his man, body wide, hold it up, then gets turned and gets you nice and direct. And I think that is a way of going about not being as creative. And I think because we're not just relying on trying to be creative from open play, and we have other avenues of getting at teams, I do think it will put more points on the board than what we were able to garner last season, the way we were trying to play.
But God forbid, Dave, if Kudus does get injured, and everyone touch wood and hope that he doesn't, then based on what we've done now, I'm sure that we'll bring in at least one more player in this window. But
we need another player.
The concern is if we lose Kudus, then we're just completely back to square one, if not worse.
Well, maybe a good transition then to this transfer window then, which we'll have plenty to discuss about. Edward from earlier, Eddie saying way too late for the Don being back. The window is closed. We'll see how the squad holds up till January. Also, we always beat City, so no surprise there. It seems like Eddie is still in his feelings about Ange Postecoglou to an extent. But we did have these breaking news here. By the way, Lee and Dave, Fabio Paratici is to return to Tottenham Hotspur, and an official role and agreement is already in place for him to start in the role, starting no later than I think than like September or something. And I think he's going to be basically coming back as the head director of the transfer department, or at least ahead of Johan Lange. But Dave, you were going to say something maybe to Eddie, and then I'll get
I was just going to say, I wonder, is this news coming out, us sort of admitting defeat this transfer window, we're now going to hold back till January now, and sort of entrust Paratici to try and fix the mistakes that maybe we've made this summer transfer window. I just wonder, people call me mad, but I said the fact that Paratici wasn't in here as soon as his ban was done tells me that Tottenham, what are they doing? They're trying to save money somewhere, because I just don't understand it. His ban was up. He could have started working the 1st of July for us, trying to get transfers in and get deals over the line. And we had him on this advisory contract until the fucking end of August, which is absolutely madness. I don't understand it. And I just wonder now, are we meeting defeat? And I'm also at the point now, to be honest with you, rather than bringing an El Canous or an El Kukui or whatever you want, all these fancy names, I couldn't give a fuck. All you're doing is filling up the squad with punts and hopes, and you're giving Frank bigger headaches, and you're creating bigger headaches for future transfer windows to come. For me, I'm at the point now, if it's not a change, if it's not a player that walks into that first 11 or is a game changer, hold your money back. Don't take risks. Don't fill up the squads with gambles, because we've missed the boat. It feels like we all of our targets are gone, and we're just trying to stab around and seeing what's available at a price we want to pay. And all you're going to do is get yourself back into a situation you were when we had Steve Hitchin, when he brought in all these fucking bums that were not good enough to be here on high wages, and we struggled for seasons to offload these guys. We were loaning half a full squad practically out every single summer, and it was sort of taking a lot of our attention off focusing on building this squad and stuff like that. So I'm at the point now, and I think the board are probably at the point now where they realize Johan Lange is not the guy they thought he was. He can't get the job done, and I think they're just trying to save face. They're announcing this to dampen the expectations between now and the end of the window, and they're going to say we're going to go big January.
I mean, what do you think about this announcement, Lee? Johan Lange potentially to take a sidestep, if not even be replaced by Fabio Paratici. He's only been in charge for so long. He's had about 4 windows, Johan Lange. Some people feel like he's had some hits. He's had some questionable calls as well. He signed players like Werner, Dragishin. He brought in the young talents of Bergvall, Archie Gray, Odebear, brought in Solanke. But it kind of feels like maybe his time here, I don't know about you, but it feels like there were a lot of things that we wanted to get done in these 2 summer windows. And it just felt like Johan Lange didn't really push the boat out in signing some of these key targets that we would have wanted. But that's just my take on things. What do you make of Johan Lange's time here, and also the chance that maybe Fabio Paratici might replace him and come back?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of interested with what Dave says, and I kind of go along with it to a certain extent. It does feel to me like I'm with him. I don't want them to just bring anybody in for the sake of numbers. I
Right.
really don't. I feel like we need numbers because I'm worried about the 2 games a week and all the rest of it, injuries and this sort of stuff, fatigue. So I'm worried about it. So I feel like we do need numbers, but I don't want just anybody. And I think Thomas Frank has made it quite clear recently in all of his press conferences where he's been talking about, if we can't bring in someone who's going to improve this squad, then we're not going to have them. We're not going to take them. And I think that's the right way. It's frustrating for us as fans, but I get that. And I think that makes absolute sense. And I think when you look at the Morgan Gibbs-White scenario and the Eze situation and this Savinho thing, and even the talk of Nico Paz and all this sort of stuff, it's just made us look like complete novices the whole way through. Now, whatever the reality
Johan Lange is a
of that
novice.
is, yeah, that's how it feels, right? And I think I've always thought that Paratici would be coming back. In my mind, I was just thinking he's coming back. So I don't think this is a surprise to anybody that he's coming back. But I think it's the announcement of it and all the rest of it is to probably distance himself away from this window. So no one goes, oh, you're keeping him, but he's still done a shit job, and to kind of put it all back onto Lange. But again, we don't know the ins and outs of it and all that sort of stuff. But for me, I just think he's done well bringing in like lots of youth players, young players. I mean, I like Bergvall, I like Gray, I actually quite like Odebear. It'd be good to see him actually get some minutes to see what he can really do, because he's been quite bright when he's had an opportunity. So I think he's done some work in those kind of things. But in terms of getting these big names across the line,
Exactly.
he's just failed, dismally.
Yeah.
And it's just been embarrassing, and it's us that kind of pick up that, innit? It's us that have to face the rival fans and get all the mocking and stuff. But like I say, I just I'm waffling a little bit, but yeah, I'm pleased that Paratici's coming back. I think it's the right thing to do. I do feel like they are trying to distance him from what's been going on by announcing he's going to come out. I'm sure he's been involved during this summer anyway. But it'll be interesting to see where we go from now. I'm hoping that we still do get a couple of signings over the line. But like I said, I don't want to just be anybody for the sake of it, like El Canus or whoever, players you from sort of lower leagues or players that are just not really up for it. I don't want that. I want the proper Premier League, walk into the starting 11 type of player that's gonna deliver for us, because we've still got so much to do. We're short now on the left wing. We're still short of someone in a number 10, and I don't think we play particularly like we need that creative player. Like I think Dave was saying it, because I think Frank is playing with what he's got. I think he plays the way he's got to suit the players that he's got, right players in the right positions, and not just trying to turn your Archie Gray into a right back when he's a central midfielder, for instance, because that's all he's got. I think he's trying to play the right players in the right positions, and you see the benefit of that. But we still need a number 10. We still need a left midfielder. We probably still need someone to support for Udogie when he comes back.
Yeah.
Albeit Spence is doing really, really well, but he's got to cover both sides. Then he's got to cover the right wing and the left wing, so left back. So there's still work to be done there. But I desperately hope that we certainly get someone in, at least from a left side point of view, who can maybe go inside if need be. But for Lange, if he's the guy that authorized Werner twice, then he should go just on that basis, to be fair.
Yeah.
The part I really agree with you there, Lee, is just that he has brought in some very talented players, and I actually respect that part, but it seems like he's been only good at maybe getting the easier deals done, and the ones that we were really looking at, the big money signings to sort of really improve the first team as well as just the quality of the squad in general. Feels like Johan Lange has really lacked in that area. Like even his first summer in charge, we were looking at, this is not even this summer, the previous summer, we were looking at players like Eze, Pedro Neto, Semenyo, the same people that we've been linked with this summer. And he hasn't been able to get any of those over the line. Yeah. And even in that first summer he took forever to get guys like Solanke. We signed Solanke like a day or two before we had our first game against Leicester City. It seemed like that deal should have been done so much earlier than that. And then we signed Odebear, who was kind of supposed to be the Pedro Neto type quality signing for that wing. He signed him, I think, a few days after our first game of the season against Leicester City. And it feels that way this summer, where we signed a bunch of guys like Kota Takai and whatnot, and he did bring Mohamed Kudus through the door, but then we still waited, a while to bring someone in like Paulinho, and we're still looking to bring in this number 10 and a left winger up until this point. So it just feels like with Johan Lange, he really drags things on and seems to wait far too long to get the deals done, almost up until the point that it's no longer possible to even get the deals done. So what I've questioned the most about him is just his ability in the negotiation areas. Like, can he actually get these deals over the line? Because he's got some money to work with. It's not like, of course, he's hamstringed by Daniel Levy to some extent, but I do believe he has money to work with. I just question his negotiation skills to actually get some of these guys over the line, really, because Paratici didn't seem to have that problem.
But see, it's even the ability to be able to fix the problems to the best of our ability. Like Lee said there, he brought in Werner twice. I mean, that's ridiculous. And not only that, then he doubled down and done the same with Tel. Brought in Tel in January, didn't work out. Let's go and sign him. Let's bring him in again. Dragusin, last summer we all knew, and then he brought in Dragusin, which, hasn't turned out well either. But then last summer, it was clear that Ange Postecoglou needed some ready-made players in the door. The only one he delivered is Solanke. The rest were all potential. And the only one that's really kicked on out of that potential has been Bergvall. Let's be brutally honest about it. Last January, Ange Postecoglou needed help. The squad needed help. We needed experienced players in here. We had no goalkeepers. They went and signed Kinski, who, cost us games. They went and signed Matisse Tel, who was never going to fix a creativity or goal problem that we were suffering at the time. And then, fair play Danzo, he's worked out. But I think, you look at a lot of the players that he's brought in here. I think you would maybe argue 3, 4, and I'm including Kudus and Paulinho in this off 2 games, by the way, in terms of the actual right things he's done for Tottenham Hotspur. But we should never have went near him in the first place. We panicked. Aston Villa got rid of him. All of a sudden, they bring in Monchi to work with Emery, and they've kicked on. They got rid of the guy because he couldn't get the players in that they needed to be able to change the game, to be able to kick on. And he's proven at Tottenham Hotspur he can't do it either. For me, he's been a fraud. He's had 4 windows. He hasn't worked out. And to your point, Jack, I don't think he knows how to sell Tottenham Hotspur. He can sell it to a player that wants to make a jump from a lower league team up to Tottenham Hotspur, or he can sell it to a player that wants the Premier League dream. A youngster. But what he can't do is, if there's other teams in the market, sell Tottenham Hotspur. Make sure they know that this is the right place for their development and that moving forward. And that's where he lets himself down. The guy's a fraud, and thank fuck he's out here.
Sam, are you on Johan Lange fraud watch like Dave and I have been for a while, or do you feel like his time here is being, I don't know, too heavily criticized by Dave and me? What do you feel like with Johan Lange and Paratici coming back?
I probably fall somewhere in the middle on Lange. I think he's brought in some good acquisitions. The argument often made on the people who aren't so enthralled with Paratici is that he also made some blunderous signings. But it comes it comes with the deal. Not every signing you make is going to be a great player. But where I agree with you on the concern with Johan Lange is like what Dave says. I mean, look at was it Matisse Tell deal in January where they went there, it failed, and then he tried to get Levy involved, it failed. Then they had to get Ange in to convince him. He clearly hasn't got the biggest dick in the room, and he knows it. He doesn't. He's not bringing that power to the table, and it's seemingly Paratici, has that kind of power. So I am excited at him coming back. And I think with Paratici, I would want him to try and bring back Gabbanini, because we haven't scouted any decent players since Gabbanini left. But Lee made an interesting point about what Thomas Frank said with I don't want to bring in players just for the sake of it. And I think that a lot of us would agree with that. The frustration comes from the fact that there was players available and we didn't get them.
Exactly.
So we're in this position only because of what the club has done. And, I know that Frank can't come out and say that, but I know not necessarily that I personally felt anything towards his comments, but I know that people were concerned and angry about his comments, suggesting that maybe we wouldn't sign anyone. And that was, I guess, paired with the statement he made about not wanting to sign another fullback, and he's okay with Ben Davis and Spence being the cover. I mean, look, Lang will thank you for Bergvall. I think we can go early and say that he seems like a real talent and hopefully develops under Frank. Other than that, there's not really that many of them where I think they're going to be a smashing success, where I think that he was the sole chief in bringing them in, and it wasn't just insight from the sort of sideline Paratici, which was clearly still happening, even if they'll never admit it because it was illegal. Yeah.
I don't think he'll go down as bad as Steve Hitchen did. Like, at the end of the day, Steve Hitchen wasted like a good 300 something plus million, on transfers. It was just almost all of them were bad.
And we're still feeling the effects of that with Levy not willing to put any money in.
Yeah, but in Johan Lange's case, for me, it was just the lack of players that he seems to have brought through the door. And also just feels like they were done so late. Even that January window that you were referencing with Matisse Tell, it took forever for us to still get that deal over the line. It was done towards the end of the January window, when we knew from day one of January that Solanke was injured, Richarlison was injured. We needed someone to come up front to actually help contribute to the goals that we were missing. And we took forever to get it over the line. Even the Kevin Danza one still happened, I think, towards the end of the January window, if I'm not mistaken. So it just feels like in Johan Lange's case, it's not necessarily made a ton of bad signings. It's more just been a lack of urgency, efficiency, and then just not even making enough signings, it feels like in certain cases. He seems to leave certain holes unfilled, if you get what I'm trying to say. When
you stack him up to Paratici, though, with Paratici, we praise Johan Lange for the young signings. Paratici done that, sign players for the academy and sign players for the first team. The bulk of this first team, Paratici signings, Vicario, Romero.
Paratici inherited much bigger dumpster fire.
Spence, Bentoncourt, a lot of these players all signed off the back of Paratici. And not only that, Paratici was able to get players out the door. No one speaks about Lange's inability to be able to get players out the door. Yeah. That's been a massive also part this summer as well. And I just think, back to someone's point, they were saying, look, it's Enix's fault. Look, I get Enoch aren't the most robust and they're not the most, ambitious going into negotiations. And I was joking with Lee beforehand. They offer like stupid clauses. We'll give you 750,000 if we win the Premier League, another 500,000 if we win the Champions League. Straight away, the other chairman's like, well, that's not your ambition, Daniel. We know that. So, like, we're never going to accept them clauses. You know what I mean? So he's dicking about, seeing what he can do, trying to throw players in, like we done with that guy from Wolves last year, trying to offer the likes of Ollie Skip and all. I mean, it's absolutely madness. We're constantly dicking about negotiations. I get that. However, I've always made the claim with Paratici, he managed to get Daniel Levy to listen to him. The Paratici never had any excuses for not getting deals over the line because he got them done. He got them done. He managed to get Daniel Levy to part with the money and get them done. He managed to get Daniel Levy to realize the benefits of pumping money into the academy, changing the structure of that and everything else. And that, for me, there's two different levels. We could sit here and blame Enoch all we want, and I agree with you. They take a massive responsibility from this window, but you also got to look at the efficiency of the DOFs as well in their roles. And at the end of the day, Paratici is much more efficient and probably the most efficient DOF I've seen at Tottenham in a long, long time.
Yeah, I completely agree there on also the outgoings department. Just feels like we've also lacked in that since he's come over. And I just think Paratici inherited a much, much worse situation when he first came into the job than Johan Lange. Johan Lange, I think, actually didn't have as much to do as what Paratici did. And they've been around, actually, when you think about it, a similar amount of time. I think Paratici had about 2 summers with us, and I think Johan Lange had about 2 summers with us. So when you look at it that way, I think that's pretty fair comparisons. But Lee, let's just make a slight transition towards just your optimism about Spurs being able to get some of these signings over the line with the few days that we have left of the window. We're now into the final week of this transfer window. Both Thomas Frank and Spurs fans have been crying out for key signings, with also several outgoings still yet to be resolved, like Dave was talking about. Are you expecting a very hectic final week at Spurs, or maybe a slightly slow and, maybe uneventful end to the transfer window?
How disappointing is it going to be if it is slow and uneventful in the end? Like it started off so. I mean, there was a period a couple of weeks ago when we was talking about Gibbs White after we just signed Kudos, where you felt like you was on top of the world. Right, Kudos had just come in. We'd met the release clause for Morgan Gibbs White. There was talk of a takeover, Levy taking a back seat. I mean, you're running around like a dog with 2 tails. Do you know what I mean? It was like just mad. And where has all that gone? Do you know what I mean? It's all just filtered away into this nothingness. And I just feel like we've spent so much time chasing players that we were just never going to get, and we spent too much time on it. And now we're just left looking and fighting for scraps. And like I said, I just don't want us to go for players for the sake of it, to have a number. I want us to go for top targets. And if we ain't going to get them, then I think I'd be prepared to suck it up. But they're going to have to look at how they've managed this window, to look at what they've got wrong and how they got that wrong and why they got that wrong. And look at how they fix that in the longer term, because we can't keep going on down this route. We know we've got loads of young prospects and all that sort of stuff. I mean, we've got more loans than Barclays Bank going out, so you think to yourself, you've got all these young players going off, but they're not ready yet. We still need that experience now. So I need them to bring in something decent, and I'm confident that we will probably do some business, but it will be those players that are kind of 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th down our list of what we really wanted. And that'll be disappointing. If they could get one more player, if they could get one more high profile player that's going to walk into the first 11 through the door, then I'd kind of accept it, because I think Paulini is a great signing. Kudos is a great signing. They've worked at 2 places we really needed it. We've lost Son. Okay, so we've got to replace him. Maddison, you kind of go, well, we didn't know that was going to happen. It's an injury, blah blah blah. But Son, they knew was happening, so they should be all over that before the end of this window. So that's the one I'm kind of putting all my hopes and wishes onto, is that we get someone across the line for that. I mean, hoping the Savinio thing happens. I mean, there's talk today, I've seen that it's unlikely and all that kind of stuff. So who knows? I hate the transfer window, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, no, Dave and I too, especially because the ITKs, I just feel like, are just a constant merry-go-round of knowing nothing really at all. It seemed like you were saying, though, you would rather Spurs bring in, if you had, of course, it kind of sucks to make a decision between one or the other. We all want both, but you would rather they get a Sonny replacement over the line than someone to fill in for the number 10 role, where James Maddison and Kulusevski are both out.
Yeah, I think that's probably our bigger position that we really need, because I think we've got options in midfield. You can kind of change it around and stuff, and I think Frank has shown that you don't necessarily need to be super creative. You just need to work really, really hard and have those players that are prepared to really battle and press high and so on. So I think there is other ways around that. I still think we need a creative player. Absolutely, we need a creative player. I just feel if I have to choose, I'd go for someone on the left hand side who can really do something special, getting those crosses in, because I think with Solanke and Richarlison, they're kind of, they work better feeded off of the crosses and the kind of, the width more than anything. So for me, that kind of makes a bit more sense.
Yeah.
Even if it meant to a certain extent that you could probably drop Solanke back a little bit and then have Richarlison as your sort of man right up the front. If you had to do that, I'd kind of go, well, in some games you could kind of get away with that maybe, because I think Solanke's really good holding the ball up and kind of linking play. So, it's an option, I guess. So yeah, for me, left-sided is the main one I'd really want to see.
I mean, Dave, I know it's a classic thing to do as a Spurs fan, is to make you decide between one or the other, when we really probably need both. But what do you make of Lee saying that we need maybe more of a replacement for Sonny on the left than we maybe do a number 10? What do you make of that?
I agree. Look, I think with number 10, I think, look, Papa Sarr may not have the ball playing ability of a number 10, but he's navigated a way around it and shows with a bit of hard work, intelligence, being able to read the play, and willingness to go out and chase that ball. You can still create goals by turning the ball higher up the pitch, and we're sort of finding a way around that. Now, look, you're not going to get away with that all season. You will come unstuck eventually. So I do think you need to, you would prefer to sort of sign that player. However, to Lee's point, you could, if you needed to, maybe drop one of the strikers, play two up top, drop one in front of the other and get him to be the hold-up guy, another one running in behind. But, look, I do think, it's got to be a creative player. It's got to be another winger, because if Kudus goes down injured, we're back into the same exact position we were last year, like Sam mentioned earlier on in the show, where you're relying on Matisse Tell, who just doesn't have it, or Wilson Odeber, who needs time to develop and stuff like that. Same with Matisse Tell, to provide you wins week in, week out. This is the situation the club got themselves into last year. You're bringing in youngsters and getting them to shoulder the expectations of millions of people. It's not right and it's not fair, and we got our answer last year. Although they tried and worked their hearts out, you're still not winning games of football. There's still naivety in them. So you do need to go and sign that experienced player. But in general, this whole transfer window has just been one absolute joke. Only Tottenham Hotspur be going into the transfer window in the final few days of the season with the bulk of their work left to do. I know that, James Maddison injury, we weren't really expecting that to happen, but a good board sees it happens and goes and gets the problem solved. Frank already wanted a number 10 in here before Maddison got injured, because we tried for Morgan Gibbs-White. So it's clear that that was an area that was highlighted, by Frank, that he wanted in the door when he first arrived, and we're still sitting here flapping around deciding who we're going to get. Left winger when you were selling Sonny, and, in general, I think we needed two wingers this summer. We're still sitting there waiting for a game-changer winger on the other side, let alone fullback, where we still need another player. You're not going to get away with Porro doing another 50-odd games this year. You're going to need another fullback. So, I mean, you still got the bulk of your incomings to do, and you still got a lot of outgoings to work. Only Tottenham Hotspur going to the final few days with the season kicking off, underprepared and with a hectic week ahead of us. You look at the clubs that we're trying to compete with, or that Spurs fans expect us to compete with, the bulk of their work is already done. They're just sitting in the window waiting to see if there's an opportunity that arises that they didn't expect, and go, okay, no problem, we'll take him. Thank you very much. There's an added bonus. Off you go, fans. Go and wank yourselves off. At Tottenham Hotspur, we're all going to be sitting here clinging on to, our clutch, clinging on to our purses at 11 o'clock at night, waiting for it to count down. And even when it counts down, we're still going to be sitting here going, oh, well, I hope Tottenham sneaks something in under the radar no one knows about. And I'm absolutely fed up with it. Every manager we do this to, as bad as people think Postecoglou was, we undermined him in the transfer window. As bad as people think Conte was, we undermined him in the transfer window. Same with Jose Mourinho. Same with Pochettino. We went 3 windows without signing a player for the guy. Reality is, it doesn't matter how promising a manager comes in and shows he is. This board let them down. And when the games come in twice a week, because we're a club that plays in Europe now, it ends up costing them their job because of injuries, because they end up relying on the same 11 because they don't want to rotate, because the guys that are in there for the rotate, they don't like them, they don't trust them, and they end up costing them games. It's every single fucking year. And what I'm sick of as well, there's always excuses. There's always journos and ITKs out there that will defend it. And I'm absolutely fed up with it. It's not good enough. It's nowhere near good enough. If Daniel Levy is on the overlap taking all the credit for everything good at Tottenham Hotspur, then why do we play semantics like we did last week? When does Levy really get in negotiations? The guy doesn't take anything bad that happens at Tottenham Hotspur. He's a massive problem. He's got up until the Bournemouth game sort out, because I've no doubt there'll be protests organised, and it would gather massive momentum compared to the first home game on Burnley where it didn't. And that would put him in a massive predicament then coming into the season. So it's up to him to get the business done. Do I back him to get it done? No, not at all. And I still think there is time to save it if he brought in a Morgan Rogers, an Asensio, a Paqueta, there's still opportunities out there for us to save it. But do I back Johan Lange and do I back Dumb and Dumber, that Johan Lange and Daniel Levy to go and get the deal done? No, I don't. They'll still piss about on deadline day, trying to offer in a parking spot here and a fucking Nando's gold card and all that bollocks. I'm fed up with it.
It's actually a Chick King gold card, I believe, before it ends up being too late. But probably the parking spot at Sainsbury's.
I've been a Spurs fan too long. I'm just used to it.
Yeah, or maybe just a few, what is it, Skyline or whatever is it, the rope walks, that whatever they do, a few press tours for them. Skywalk, exactly. Sam, what's your optimism going into the final days of the transfer window? Do you expect Spurs to sign a number 10 and a left winger, or maybe just one of them? Where do you stand?
I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm optimistic, but it would be a colossal failure to go into the season without both those additions. If I had to pick one, based on the links we're going for and the current situation, I'd be agreeing with the lads and be going left wing, because mostly it feels like the options in the 10 all seem to be like last minute. Oh my God, let's scour the list and see who we can possibly get in. Whereas they identified Savinho like a month ago, or at least in the media like a month ago. So it's clearly someone they were actually looking at. So I prefer to go out and get our top choice in a important position rather than our 10th choice in another important position where you could, worst case, wait to January if you got in a good enough left winger. And had Kudus playing at 10 if you really needed it. But as we've seen, Frank has gone a lot more energy rather than creativity, because that's the hand that he's been dealt, and it has been working so far. But as we said, we're 2 games into the season and we're competing across 4 different competitions. So, as much as we want to pretend or hope that we're not going to get any injuries, we will. That is just part and parcel of football. So to go into the season without signing an attacking mid and a left winger for me is huge red flags. And I also mentioned it before. I'm still not really sure why we're not looking at a player like Nathan Ake if they still want a good rotational like left centre back who can also play fullback. I just don't really get it. But so for me, I think we're going to have a ridiculous amount of fake news, which we've already seen and probably has been going on throughout the window. And, I'm actually hoping and praying that this is the window where they finally, lock Fabrizio Romano up and throw away the key for the amount of crap that he shovels down our throats, and all these conspiracies about him. But look, we've just seen so much crap, so much crap. Half of it that there's not even, you don't even need to bother reading all of it. Like the stuff about potentially willing to let Odegaard go for 25 million when you signed him for 25 plus 5 in the summer before. It's like, why would we ever do that? What is the agenda? I don't know. So.
I think all of them are on fraud watch. Even Alistair Gold, with his ITK stuff, he was saying that Spurs are going to be signing another center back, but we've seen no real signs of that. And then he also earlier in the window said, don't believe any rumors that Spurs will be signing a center back. So he's gone a complete 360 or 180 even on that one. And then you would say the same thing. Even Paul O'Keefe, one person that was absolutely beloved, also had a howler with saying that the Mohamed Kudus deal is not happening and it's all fake news. And then just, 20 minutes later or whatever, it gets announced, by the Spurs. So it seems like all of them have been exposed to some extent. And kind of why I agree with Lee that it's kind of why I hate the transfer window, to be honest, because it's just annoying to sort of get your hopes up from all these people that claim to be in the know. And then all of a sudden, you just get brought back down to earth. It's like being blue balled, just constantly, throughout an entire summer, really. But Lee, I think we need to let you go. You've given us a solid hour here, sir.
Yeah,
so I wanted
really appreciate your time.
Give yourself a plug or just any final things that you want to say here with us. And thanks for joining us. Good to have you back, man.
No, it's good to be back. Yeah, sorry I got to go, but my dinner is calling me. I can hear it now, and being a bigger guy, I need to
What's for
feed that
dinner?
hunger. Fajitas, actually.
Oh,
Yeah, and
Love it.
looking forward to it. So no, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. And I don't come on as often as I'd like to, so I'll make a bit more of an effort this season for sure. If anyone wants to see me on my channel, Lead the Dorset Spur, come over, say hello. If you want to see an old man moaning, then that's your place to go. But thanks for having me on, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Up the Spurs.
Appreciate you
Alright,
coming
big
on,
up,
sir.
mate.
Good to have you with us.
Really
Enjoy the
appreciate it.
fajitas.
Cheers,
Guys,
boys.
make sure see you. Enjoy. Guys, make sure you do get across to Lee's channel. Make sure you throw subscribe on there. He does throw his thoughts up on everything that happens at Tottenham, post-game thoughts and everything else. Really like Lee. He's an absolute gentleman, so please get across and show him the love. And then you can also follow him here on Twitter as well if you want to, Twitter him if you agree or disagree with anything he said here today. So make sure you get across and show Lee the love. Hopefully, his fajitas are good. Sound tasty.
Yeah, if we didn't ask him, maybe if, we knew we were letting him off, but maybe we need to grill him more. No pun intended, since the fajitas are usually grilled. On what sort of meat choice he might have been going with on those fajitas: chicken, beef, pork.
Yeah.
Just giving my
Big
kind of final
decisions.
thoughts on the window as we're kind of wrapping things up here, everybody. I'd be really disappointed if Spurs didn't bring in both a number 10 and a left wing. Like Dave said earlier, we were going after Morgan Gibbs-White and Eze for a reason. Clearly, that is an area that they feel like they need to try to upgrade on and bring in someone of real quality. And the rumors around someone like Savino just haven't gone away. It seems like that was also an area that they had real interest in. But with so few days left in the window, it seems like it's going to be one or the other, which is just classic, Spurs, that in the beginning of the window, they seem to indicate that they desperately needed to upgrade in both of those areas, only for them to do nothing up until the final days. And then it seems like they're only going to do one or the other. I also am a bit conflicted on which one we need more than the other, because at the minute, Dave and I feel like this midfield. Pop Mopsar, you can't drop Palhinha, you can't drop Bentancur. So and again, very Spurs sort of sad logic, but like the classic can we get away with, type of terminology, with this midfield until maybe a Madison and a Kulusevski start to come back. Can Thomas Frank problem solve his way out of it? I have faith that he can, but it would be nice to have still that quality number 10 for him to pick from, or to be able to look at, just in case he did want to switch things up a little bit more. But I also wonder, with the signings of Matisse Tell and Odebear, like, what's the point of signing them if they're not going to eventually get their minutes, on the left wing, and it feels like Spurs signing a Savino or Spurs signing someone like a Semenyo or something like that is, again, just questionable recruitment. Because why did you bring in Matisse Tell for 30 plus million? Why did you sign Odebear for so much money, and then, still bring in people ahead of them? It just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me in terms of the squad planning for the long term. Johnson at the minute is the starting left winger, but he needs competition. But I don't know. I just question, where we actually, if we are going to do one or the other, I am a little conflicted on which one we do, rather number 10 or left wing. I'm a little conflicted.
With Johan Lange, it just seems like the guy's constantly fixing his own mistakes. With Paratici, you look at the bulk of the starting 11, it's still there from when he signed them. Johan Lange, all he had to do was add to it in the right areas, and he failed to do so. And it's like he's continuously going out there trying to fix his mistakes. It's ridiculous.
But I mean, Johnson right at the minute is scoring goals on the left wing, but then, the other competition he has is Odebear and Tell. But, if they're not going to get minute, I don't know. It just,
well, Johnson is still scoring tap-ins, but if we lose Kudus or that, where are these tap-ins going to come from?
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. Trying to bring up the members' questions. Please, everybody, follow Sam on Twitter. I put his link in back there, so please follow the man. Sam, give yourself a plug as I'm trying to find the post.
Should be there.
This is always the hardest bit for me.
Yeah, do you mind bringing it up, Dave? My computer's being weird. Sorry, Sam. I interrupted you.
Sorry, Sam.
No, sorry. I was just saying this is always the hardest bit for me, because I never know how to big myself up to catch the big fish, But yeah, I mean, I just talk all things Spurs, really, get my opinions on the sort of current affairs that are out and about, the occasional argument here and there. Mostly, I usually think I win. Maybe I don't, but I guess you could follow me and decide for yourselves.
Well, guys, make sure you do get across and follow Sam. I think he's a very nice guy. You know, he likes to put up his thoughts up there. And like you said, he's looking for debates and arguments. So if there is anyone out there similar minded, make sure you get over, follow Sam's Twitter account, and you know, go and have them debates with him. Sam, I know you're a very busy guy as well. So do you want to stay around for this? Or do you want to go and have dinner after a long day at work?
I'll stick around for Artis's question, because there's normally one in here that is for me, and then I'll make a move if that's all right.
Yeah. No,
go ahead. Says thoughts on this. I don't think we'll get anyone else. It's too far. It's far too late. I guarantee we're going to pay the price in November and December time. I think we'll sign somebody, but I don't think we'll sign a number 10 and a left winger. That's what I'm thinking. We'll sign one or the other.
It's not about signing somebody. It's about signing somebody that can come in and have an impact. And I do
totally
agree with RST. I think,
I think it will be a panic signing, though. I think it will be a panic signing in the number 10 or the left wing. That's what I'm thinking will happen.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's a sign that can make an impact. And, you know, look, at the end of the day, we need to do something. Hopefully they can get something done. But if they don't, and even if they only bring in one, I still think we're going to pay the price for it around November, December, when the games are coming in thick and fast. You've got Carabao Cup, Champions League, you know, Premier League. And then you've got the massive fixture list in December then to overcome as well, where you do have to rotate, usually have injuries. That's when we sort of see the drop-off happen. You know, last season, you know, I know there was a bit of a rocky start under Ange Postecoglou, but in the main, you know, when we got injured, that's when the main drop-off happened. That happened under Conte. We were top of the league under Jose Mourinho. When we got injuries, the drop-off happened. You know, it always happens when we get injuries. So unless we improve the situation, the same shit will happen again, Aris.
No. Why are people more upset at Romano than the board for our horrible transfer business? That's a fair point.
Can I just take that?
For the club has no knowledge on the actual transfer business.
Yeah, so I did. This one's been bugging me. It's semantics. It's just looking to give Levy a free pass. At the end of the day, look, Romano is a grifter, right? You know, he's well known, like agents, you know, putting stuff out there and everything else. He's well known and all that sort of stuff in that regards. At the end of the day, going after Romano is not the person. Romano is not telling Enoch or Levy not to sign this player or not do that. It's their own decisions. It's just an excuse for them.
Yeah, if anything, I think a lot of them have been exposed, you know, not just Romano. I think it is kind of a bit rich to just throw Romano into that.
The whole industry has been exposed. The whole ITK industry has been exposed this summer.
Yeah. And also it feels like a lot of the people that are complaining about Romano are also the people that chew up his, you know, stuff every single day and make content out of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It seems a bit rich. What do you think of this? Yeah.
I'm just wondering with the Romano stuff, like, and the ITK stuff in general, because obviously Ange said we had a leak, right? I wonder if, on a Spurs point of view, we're just not feeding anyone information inside the club, and it's just you know, a very select few people actually know truly what's going on. So the people that, you know, your Paul O'Keefe's, your Ali Golds, etc., are getting their information from don't have the right information or don't have the most up-to-date information. But with this Romano thing and all the other ITKs as well, where people are commenting on their things like F you Romano and F you Eze. It's like, I get it, like, you're upset, and I said it on another podcast, but like when you're taking it out trying to like throw personal insults at, you know, people on Twitter, that's when you embarrass yourselves and the Spurs fan base. So I would appreciate if that stopped.
Yeah, touche. By the way, everybody, we've had well over 400, you know, pretty high levels of 400 people in the house on YouTube. Wow. I think looks like 300 plus on Twitter. So please, if you're on Twitter, follow us over to YouTube. We'd appreciate the support over here. Thanks for watching us in general. And also do smash the like button, because I'm only seeing about 140 likes or so while still having well over 400 people as we're wrapping up. And we don't ask that often, so we really would appreciate the support. It just sends it out to more and more people. But thank you guys for watching along. Also, just in case you guys didn't know, if you are a member of the channel, this is something that you can take advantage of, what Dropkick Your Teacher has done here in terms of leaving us questions for the end of the show here. We do reserve time to answer the members' questions. And he's saying, what do you think of this? You look at the upcoming fixtures, there's really zero excuses if we don't get all of a sudden, he's a happy clapper. If we don't get all 21 points from this weekend up until Chelsea, I may be getting ahead of myself, but these are all matches we should be winning. even with Europe. Just to chime back at Artist T, he's the guy that usually says before the game that we're going to get stomped and absolutely, walloped. So it's a bit funny that now all of a sudden he's saying we're going to be winning or expecting to win all the rest of these matches.
I look at the fixtures coming up to the Chelsea game. You've got Bournemouth. You would expect us to beat them this weekend at home,
especially at home.
West Ham away. Look, West Ham away isn't the easiest places, but you said it yourself today, Jack. They're one player away from selling Paqueta of being relegated. Brighton. Look, that's going to be a difficult one, but again, beatable right now. Wolves beatable, Leeds United beatable, Villa beatable, Everton beatable. So all the way up to the Chelsea game. You look at the next 7 games. Sure. They are winnable for Tottenham Hotspur playing this way. But again, football isn't paid on paper, Artist T. Sometimes a team can sort of get it together and make it a bit more of a difficult game. And sometimes there is that thing in football where you just have teams, no matter what form you're in or they're in, it's just difficult. The likes of your Brighton, the likes of your Aston Villa, it doesn't really matter what form the two teams are in. They're always very difficult games for Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah, I'd agree with what you said there exactly. On paper, you could say that, but I'm just curious if Artist T will keep that energy for next time, because he seems to most of the time say we're going to get walloped before these games. What's most unacceptable is the club would have known Sonny was leaving well before he announced his departure. Why did we not already find a replacement lined up? It's almost twofold, Sam, right? We didn't find a replacement necessarily for Sonny yet. And after the James Maddison injury, we've had all this time to try to find a replacement for him. It's pretty insane that other clubs are getting their deals done. Even Nottingham Forest, right? They signed like 2 or 3 players during that Morgan Gibbs-White saga where we just sat and twiddled our thumbs. Like, what on earth is going on behind the scenes at Spurs? It just seems like it's just dead noise, nothing, in fact.
Well, we let a few players go to Nottingham Forest that would have been great for us, or would have been, good options to bring in. I mean, they bought James McAtee. I know that the City have a buyback on him or something, but McAtee for 25-30 million, I thought that was very good business. They brought in Douglas Luiz. They also brought in another attacking player, but I can't think of who it is right now.
Yeah, Forest are strengthening more than us, and they're not even in the Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, it's just very frustrating with this whole, But to be honest, Artist, I'm not sure what you mean by we haven't signed a Son replacement. We signed Matisse Tell already. So I don't get what you're complaining about. He's not a
replacement, though, is he? I think what he means is like ready-made.
I think he said that with heavy sarcasm.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed the sarcasm. I'm just itching for an argument today.
Yeah, no. To be honest, I felt that energy when I came in. Felt that.
Give me one then.
No, but you're spot on about Nottingham Forest like showing more ambition this window than us. And this is a team that nearly qualified for the Champions League last year, Nottingham Forest, and yet they're still pushing the boat out. And they've replaced, Anthony Lange. They've replaced some of the guys that they have lost, exceptionally well. Why are people so eager to bring in
Bilal El Khanous?
El Khanous, I'd rather us bring in no one than the wrong player. That's how you end up with a Brian Hill, or just a player that makes it seem like you're playing with 10 men. He's not good enough. He's not that creative spark we need. We're in the Champions League, for F's sake. Does he scream of a
panic?
I like Odebear, Dave, but I feel like Khanous would be kind of like an Odebear signing, where it's someone that probably has a lot of potential, but it's not necessarily someone that is going to push this team on.
Exactly what it is. But how much money are we going to keep wasting on potential when you've still got Donnelly, Moore, and players of our own that are already there stacked with potential as well? Like, this is why we can't keep making this mistake, because all you're doing is just filling out the squad with lots of potential, but potential doesn't put points on the board. End product does, and that's where Tottenham are missing the trick here. Look, it's just another mistake, to be honest with you. What's the difference between giving El Khanous a chance or calling back Jamie Donnelly, not sanctioning that money, and giving him a chance in January to prove he's the guy?
And then he also says, why are we not looking outside of England for a winger or a creative midfielder? It's ridiculous. English owners don't want to do business with Levy. It's ridiculous. I was actually listening to a podcast just the other day, and they were kind of discussing that oftentimes, like, if you are a club that, and maybe our case, that isn't really willing to spend these high numbers, on Premier League players, proven players, there are always, plenty of quality options, outside of England, and they usually tend to cost a bit cheaper. Of course, the risk comes with that. Not all of them tend to adapt to the to the English system or the Premier League, but there are good deals out there for other quality players. The thing is, you just have to get your research done. you have to make sure that, it is a player that you are pretty confident will be able to succeed in that transition over. But if we are going to, I don't think we should be, just to say that, outright, we shouldn't be operating this way. But if we are going to operate this way and try to continue to not spend as much as we could, I do feel like we could be doing a bit better research, outside of England, to be honest.
Well, that's the difference. That's the difference between Paratici and Johan Lange. That's half of the reason why Aston Villa got rid of Johan Lange. He couldn't operate in the European market. That's why they brought in the guy from Sevilla. You look at us. With Paratici, he was able to operate in the European market. That's how we pulled out Romero, Van der Ven, Bentancur, Kulusevski's.
Pat Montessori we signed for like 15 million. That was probably seen as like just a random signing. All of a sudden, one of the best players in the team.
100%. You look at Johan Lange, he can't operate in the European market. He's never proven that he can. That's one of your biggest problems right there and there alone. I know Paratici gets stick, as soon as the news was announced, I have no doubt people are there going, oh, Juve, get ready. We're coming with a fortune. But at the end of the day, I mean, Bentancur is probably our best midfielder. Kulusevski, up until he got injured last year, was our best player, So for me, that's the big difference. Get Paratici back. We'll be back in the European market. We'll be spinning. People think the transfer rumors are mad. Now, wait till Paratici comes back. He's notorious for ringing up the likes of Romano and all the journals and going, oh, by the way, we're operating over here. And then he's over the other side of the world bringing in a player.
Yeah, you brought in Destiny Udogie and Pat Montessori for, I think, combined less than 30 million. Those two great players. Like, that's exactly the market I think Artist T is talking about. Are there any players in the Irish League we should look at to bring in, Dave, branching from my previous question?
No, the only players we should be looking at from the Ireland League is like between 16 and 19-year-olds, to be honest with you. The standard of the Irish League is nowhere near good enough to produce any sort of players like that for Tottenham Hotspur. Look, don't forget, you've got Mason Melia joining up in January, from St. Pat's. You've got him coming in. He's more of a striker. But apart from that, you're looking at between 16 and 19-year-olds, no one that's ready to come in and make an impact anyway. RST. The Irish League standard, it's getting there, it's improving, but it's nowhere near the level that we should be operating in that market for game changes for Tottenham.
Mason Melia seems to be ripping it up, though, at least with getting some goals, in his final months there, from what I can tell. And Dan Coy is saying, member for 41 months. I believe it's a fan show member as well. Thank you so much, Dan, for your support, brother. He's saying, big up Dave and Jack. Can't wait for the window to close. Feeling we'll be left underwhelmed in our squad depth by the end of the window. Come on, you Harris Army. That's kind of the feeling, unfortunately, Dan. And I think we feel the same way, where it's not really my favorite time of year, the transfer window. I mean, don't get me wrong. I want us to get signings over the line. But I just the constant just sort of buying into the rumors here and there, the ITK is getting exposed, left and right. It's just a time of year that is quite frustrating. Like I said, it's just like being blue balled constantly by getting your hopes up for certain people, because the Eze one, I did get my hopes up for. The Morgan Gibbs White situation, I got my hopes up for, and it feels like we've just been crushed to new lows when it comes to some of these signings, man. I've gotten very tired of it, but appreciate you, Dan. I think we definitely agree with you.
We're used to it, Dan. We're a similar age, Dan. I mean, let's not pretend we're not used to this. It's just nearly every summer. Paratici was the one that changed the game a little in terms of you could expect the unexpected. But, apart from that, it's more or less the same every year, Dan. Every year, every manager.
And then the likes of Artist T has two questions here. One I know is for Sam. He was going to ask what Sam is having in terms of the fish fingers. And Artist T saying Sunderland have even spent more than us. Yeah, it's amazing that this is the window that we're probably seeing Spurs spend the least, actually. You would think Champions League money, Europa League money, that new sense of, I don't know, hope and optimism after winning the Europa League, going into this new season, new manager. You would think you would sort of carry on and, also as well take the notice of the warning signs from last year, right? It's just amazing that they just haven't at all pushed the boat out. They've almost been more conservative than they have been in previous years. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's ambition. They want to stay in the Premier League. They want to try and survive. They know that what they've got needs to be upgraded. That's where they're spending the money. With us, it's always a question, is the money there? We have to sell first. When you're seeing clubs coming up spending over 100 million, there is no excuses with the stadium, the match revenue we're producing, and that's not just like ticket sales. That's including all the food and everything else. You're talking about the merch that they're selling. You're talking about the boxing, the concerts, the F1 track, fucking everything else that we've got going on. Abseiling, skywalking, you name it. You know, there's no reason why we can't be outspending someone like Sunderland. But at the end of the day, it comes down to ambition.
Yeah, 100%. Sam, are you having fish fingers tonight, by the way?
No, I don't know what's in the fridge, to be honest. I think it's actually quite threadbare. So I'm thinking if there is nothing, I might have to, in Camden, there's a cheeky chicken katsu curry place. It's like a tenner for like a portion and a half, basically, of chicken and rice with the sauce off.
Yeah.
So it's
a
a good
bit
deal.
of
Good bang for your
pickled
buck.
ginger in there as well. Oh,
You got to get chips with that, though. You got to go half and half, lad.
No, because it's got it. I'm telling you, Dave. Like, you know, I can eat a lot. Like, this is a nice, big, healthy portion. You'll be full for a good few hours afterwards.
Fair. Well, I may try it if I ever get down your way. I may go for one.
If you can't, mate, we'll have to get it in. We'll have to order it in.
Yeah.
Dave's
You'll have
just
to
the
order
kind of
it in
guy.
for the next debate show. Just tease me with it. Sit there with it in front of you and eat it.
Dave's just the kind of guy who would get the full chef's tasting menu and still ask, if you can spare a little side of chip orders, at some point during it.
My missus laugh. I walk in and get a Sunday roast dinner and I still order a side of chips.
Yeah, exactly. That's a better example. Chris, thank you so much for the support, as well as Artist T from earlier. Appreciate you guys. But Chris saying, big up Dave and Jack. If we sign another player, I will be surprised. It's another case of we tried FC. Yeah. If we don't end up, I think this window has gone already disastrously. So, even if they do end up, signing someone towards the end, I really hope they don't try to pretend as if it's, gone according to plan or anything like that. Clearly, it's been a disaster of a window with what they were trying to do, Chris. Yeah. But if we don't sign anyone, I would like to see some sort of video from a Johan Lange or Daniel Levy afterwards to see how they try to somehow explain, how this window has gone. Because as much as it would be very rageful and be hard to watch, be watching through sort of cringed eyes, but I do probably want an explanation of some kind, whether it's fake or stupid or not. I want an explanation of some kind of how this window has gone.
Honestly, you won't get it. Frank will go off to an unbeaten start. Daniel Levy will call a fan for him. He'll come out with, we've got our Tottenham back, and then it'll all go tits up after that. Chris, it's the usual. Big up, though, my man. Good to see you, Chris. Hopefully you're keeping well up there in Newcastle.
Absolute legend. Alrighty, I think we're going to wrap up this show. Thank you guys so much for the support. So many people in the house watching with us. We really do appreciate you guys for that as well. And we will see you for the next panel show, I believe, on Thursday. Fan show should be tomorrow. And then, of course, we have the game on Saturday against Bournemouth. Thank you to Dermatron for 42 months. Thanks for Eddie for getting us started on the Johan Lange fraud question, and the likes of Parachichi coming back as well. Thanks for Dan Coys and Dropkick, your teacher, and Chris as well for the support towards the end of the show. And thanks for everybody that's been in here with us. And thanks to Sam for taking part. And once again, another great panel show. Yeah. And thanks to the likes of for Lee the Dorset Spur joining us too. See y'all next time, everybody. And keep your hopes up, I guess. Is what I'll probably advise you guys for what could happen this transfer window, but don't want to upset you guys too much.
Just turn off all transfer rumors and listen to music. It's so much more peaceful.
Yeah, maybe if anything, just try to stay as far away from the Spurs news as possible until something actually happens. That's maybe Dave and I's method of going about it. We'll see you next time, everybody. Come on, you Spurs. Let's hope the Thomas the Frank engine just keeps choo-chewing. See you next time.